Members, a quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask Assemblymember Doss Williams to offer us today's prayer.
Father, incline our hearts towards you for this new day with its promise and potential. We thank you. May our part in this day be full of meaning and hope for all. May our efforts and our words be characterized by kindness and give expression to the goodwill and truth that is within us. May they also be the key which unlocks the good and truth in others. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Halderman as she leads us in the pledge. Ms. Halderman. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Wednesday, February 9th, 2011. The Assembly met at 12 noon. Honorable Fiona Moss, Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly, presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dawson Wilson at the desk. Reading Clerk Timothy Moore. The reading. The roll was called. Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Amiano, Atkins, Bell, Berryhill, Block, Blumenfield, Bonilla, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Butler.
Mr. Calderon moves and Ms. Conway seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent for Speaker John Perez to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection.
And also request unanimous consent to allow Assembly members Nielsen to speak on Adjourn in Memory today.
Without objection. Mr. Wesso, you may introduce your guests.
Thank you, distinguished members and Speaker. On behalf of the Speaker, John Perez, the Honorable John Perez, I am honored to present this resolution commemorating Friday, February 11th as 211 Day in California. I would also like to single out the United Way for their leadership in ensuring the success of the 211 program. 211 is an innovative service that connects Californians to vital human services. As we are all keenly aware, many Californians who are eligible to receive services do not access them. 211 is an effort to ensure that every California has fast, convenient way to access those services. More than 90% of our state has access to the 211 system, giving them a simple and direct way to find the support they need through these difficult economic times. Last year alone, 211 call centers across the nation received more than 15.7 million calls. In California, 211 was recently instrumental in providing a fast and easy way for recipients of the Stage 3 child care to receive critical information about the status of their child care. 211 is an example of simple ways we can make government more accessible to the people of our state. It has provided an invaluable service to more than 1 million Californians who are struggling to cope with the recession last year alone. I'm so proud to present this resolution commemorating 211 Day in California. I'd like to introduce these wonderful folks who are a vital part of this program's success to accept the resolution. They are Peter Manzo, the co-chair of 211 California and president and CEO of the United Way of California, Nancy Findison, co-chair of the 211 California and president and CEO of Community Services Planning Council, Lillian Paula Corral, program manager, 211 California in Los Angeles. Please join me in commending these outstanding individuals and this invaluable service to our state. Thank you very much.
Ms. Yamada, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I just wanted to quickly say a special thank you to Nancy Findison, with whom I partnered many, many years ago in the very early iterations of 211 in the Sacramento region. I believe we tried to do a 9-county consortia at that time, which was a little bit ambitious. But 211 has been very instrumental in our local efforts to enroll people in the Earned Income Tax Credit workshops, leading to lots of our residents getting the money they deserve. So I just wanted to give this special thank you to Nancy Findison of the Community Services Planning Council. Thank you so much.
Members, we're now going to move to business on the daily file, of which there is none. We're now going to move to announcements. So on Monday, February 14th, 2011, the Assembly's formal portrait will be taken. All members should be present by the announced start of floor session for staging. The photo will be taken promptly at 12:15 p.m. 12:15 p.m. Monday, the Assembly's formal portrait. Session schedule is as follows. Friday, February 11th, no floor session, no check-in session. Monday, February 14th, floor session at 12 noon. Tuesday, February 15th, check-in session. February 16th, check-in session. February 17th, check-in session. Friday, February 18th, floor session at 9 a.m. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. We're now going to move to requests to adjourn in memory. The following members were previously granted permission to speak on adjourn in memory. Mr. Nielsen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly. It's a very sobering moment to recognize anyone here in adjourns to memory, but particularly one who is a legend. I'm asking that we adjourn in honor today and in memory of Jim Frayne, a longtime institution in this building, an advocate. Over the years, for the trial lawyers and many of the peace officers of California and probation officers who put their lives on the line for us, and Jim Frayne was their advocate. His wife, Roberta, of 49 years, cannot be with us here today, nor his son, Sean, who preceded him in death, but we have his daughters, Debbie Keller, Colleen McDonough here, Rory, his son-in-law, Rory McDonough here. Granddaughters Sharon and Taylor are with us also today. Jim, if you knew him, and he's been around since I started here many, many years ago, truly a man of integrity. But what stands out most about this man, beyond him being a truly credible advocate, he was a man with an incredible heart. Jim Frayne thought of and fought for his clients and the trial attorneys and the peace officers associations over the years, but he was always caring about people. As he got to know legislators, he cared about their families and did things to help legislators time and time again. When I went to see him at the hospital a couple of weeks ago, Jim Frayne was having a very hard time breathing, but he wanted to
Mr. Nielsen, I'm sorry, Mr. Calderon would like to be recognized real quick.
Mr. Nielsen, but I wanted to call for more order in the House. Mr. Frayne's family is here. Mr. Frayne gave a lot of his life to this place. I think we should honor his memory.
Thank you, Senator Calderon. He was a dear man. And when we remind you of times of people like this who are a legend, they are examples for us to learn from, and those examples should live on in us. And my point about Jim Frayne, his caring heart, so I'm trying to see him, and he's trying to talk, and I really don't want him to because I know that's being so hard on him. And he's writing me notes about contacts and his clients that can carry on and people that I can work with while he's kind of not on the front lines. He's caring about other people at this very perilous moment in his life. On Jim Frayne's mind was not about him, not even the difficulty he was having breathing, but he was trying to give me instructions of how to help other people that he wanted to help, and maybe now I could fill in for Jim. That's an uncommon gift, an uncommon blessing to humankind, and an example that we should all live forward. He was an amateur boxer who later became chairman of the State Athletic Commission, and I remember going to boxing matches here at the Memorial Auditorium with Jim. I am a boxing aficionado, too, and we did share that. He was vice chairman of the Contractor State Licensing Board for a number of years. And there's a kind of interesting, I think it's worthy of some note, of his honors. He's got honorary Doctor of Law degrees from 2 different universities. Many resolutions from the California State Legislature for his work on various boards and commissions, voluntary ones, but ones that were all for the good of the order. The boxing resolution was one, the administration of justice and consumer rights. These were areas that were beyond his area of lobbying and advocacy, but stuff that he cared about, and he became an advocate for them too, pro bono, if you will, always, always from the heart. He was a Senate Advisory Coalition on court reform, and he was a part of the Lorenzo Patino Advisory Committee for some time. Just a truly great man, ladies and gentlemen. And as I think about Jim, I again will be reminded of when I first met him. And I'm not the best trial lawyer vote around here, but he devoted just as much time to me as those who were the hardcore advocates for the trial attorneys. He didn't write me off, and he probably got me to vote a few times. In fact, I know he did, because he didn't write me off, nor did I write Jim off. But he retained the friendship over all these years. And it was a small payback as I went to see him a couple of weeks ago, and I took some flowers. And remembered several years ago when I was in that same hospital in somewhat perilous circumstances myself. Here comes Jim Frayne with some flowers for me from the Sacramento Deputy Sheriff's Association. Now, I was head of the Board of Prison Terms. They didn't have any particular dog in the fight about me. Why would they care about me? Well, they cared about me because Jim Frayne cared about me, and he came to see me. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jim Frayne was a true legend. Do recognize him, but remember him by conducting yourselves from your hearts. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson.
Mr. Speaker, members, thank you. I rise this morning to say a few words also in memory of Jim Frayne. In a time when we're criticized all too often for our incivility, Jim Frayne represented the antithesis of that type of behavior. He was a real gentleman. He was good and caring and gracious to all. He was not just an institution around this building. He was not just a legend in this environment. he was a very special person in the Sacramento community. He didn't just have friends among lawmakers and lobbyists, but friends throughout this region. People he cared about, groups and events he participated in. He extended himself throughout the Sacramento area, contributing to our daily and regional life in meaningful and profound ways. As a Sacramento County Supervisor, I had the pleasure of encountering Jim in his representation of the Sacramento County Deputy Sheriff's Association on numerous occasions. But whether on a particular issue we agreed or disagreed, Jim was always the same. He was understanding, he was complimentary, he cared about what I thought, and he tried to make the best of whatever the circumstances were in the interest of his clients and his interest in the community. Jim Frayne will be missed, not just on these grounds and in this building, but throughout this community.
Mr. Calderon.
I'd like to add my comments to those that have already been made. I met Jim 20 years ago when I was a freshman. Actually, even longer than that. I don't even want to think about that. He was lobbying for the California Trial Lawyers Association, then the Trial Lawyers Association. And I'll never forget that he came in and he offered help. The first day he walked in, knowing he represented trial lawyers, I expected to be lobbied on some trial lawyer bill that was going to be controversial, and I was going to have to make a choice, which was always difficult on that issue for me. But he didn't. He came in and he offered his help and his perspective for whatever it was worth. And I'll never forget that because as a freshman, you know, I was unsure of myself. I didn't know how it was going to go. To have him come in and just offer some perspective, some historic perspective, and also be available as a sounding board was very important to me. And we became friends, and we're friends the whole time. And I mention that because whenever the term lobbyist comes up, it raises eyebrows. Perhaps lobbyists, like politicians, are the punchline for too many jokes. But they are as much a part of this system as any stakeholder, as the press, or anyone else that does business here in Sacramento. And they have a job to do. And they're paid to do a job. But they're part of this system because they work in it every day and they care about what happens on a global level in terms of what kind of government we're going to have. And if you asked Jim what his opinion was, he would tell you. Sometimes, well, I won't say contrary to his client, but he certainly wouldn't step back from answering a difficult question. So I think it's appropriate that we recognize him. I have great memories. He tried to get me to a wrestling match. I remember telling him, I'm sorry, I just don't really follow that sport. And he'd say, it's not a sport, this is great entertainment. And he'd always try and get me to go over there. I really regret I never went. But I think that we should recognize him not as the lobbyist, although he was a good one, but for the human being and the human quality he brought to this place, the responsibility that he felt for California as a state and as a government, and felt about the people of California at the same time. He had a profound influence, I think, on my life. He influenced many, many others. I can tell his family, who's at the back of the chambers, he will be sorely missed. Whenever I saw his face, it always cheered me up. And he always had a good joke or something interesting to share every time he came to my office or if I bumped into him in the hallway. So we want to thank the family for the sacrifices they made. I mean, lobbyists, you know, are 24/7 as well. And we want to thank you for allowing us to get to know Jim the way you knew him. He will be missed.
Thank you, members. Please bring Mr. Frain's name to the desk to be printed in the journal. Mr. Berryhill, I believe you want to introduce some guests.
Just real briefly, I want to welcome my guests, the kids from the Vineyard Christian Middle School. They're up above me. I can't see them. I know they're up there somewhere. I want to welcome them and their parents. And thank you.
And up in the gallery, we've also noticed that we have a number of veterans present. If those of you who are veterans could rise and be recognized. You are always welcome here. I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Fuhrer moves, Mr. Hagman seconds that this House stand adjourned until Monday, February 14th at 12 noon. Quorum call is lifted.